On the first morning, the air was cold and the sun had beaten me to the gate. My head was freshly shaved, the shine on my boots still too bright. I stood in front of the tall stone gate of the academy, the one I'd only ever seen in photos. Up until a few weeks earlier, my inner script went like this. The second my foot crosses this gate, it's over. Mission accomplished. I'm officially one of the best. Grades, tests, but standing there among the line of new cadets, one sharp thought hit me. This is just the ticket in. The real game starts now. The introductory phase was called Beast. Everyone said, Beast is hell. Back then, I had no idea what hell really meant. A few hours later, out on the training field under a brutal sun, I was bent over with my hands on my knees, gasping like a fish out of water. The commander kept roaring, checking his watch, roaring again. Move it. Being smart won't save your ass here. This is where we find out who still moves when it hurts. My body gave out long before my mind did. Muscles burned, chest tight. That night when we finally dragged ourselves into the barracks, everyone collapsed onto metal bunk beds. The air was thick with sweat, foot spray, and exhaustion. I soon realized this place had its own legends. Mark, the tanned, athletic guy, had been an 800-meter champion outside. A small medal hung above his bunk. A few beds over, a guy with messy dark blonde hair and glasses sat at a desk. Jake. Everyone knew about his entrance scores. I said to Mark, "So you really are a track champion," he said. "I was. Here you start from zero." Jake looked up from his books and added, "At least don't stress about the theory. If I'm safe anywhere, it's there." Lying on my bunk, I watched the two of them, one king of the body, one king of the brain. And I kept asking myself, so where do I fit into this picture? The next morning, the wake-up whistle went off in my ears like a gunshot. We tumbled out of our bunks, complaining, and started straightening our blankets. In the middle of all that motion, one bunk stood out. Perfectly made, not a single bag, book, or personal item on it. Like nobody had ever slept there. Someone said, "He packed his stuff last night and left." Another, disbelieving, "The jacked-up guy, the one we all thought was a machine." A third shrugged. "Yeah," he said, "this life isn't for me." I stared at the empty rack. The first one to quit was the one we thought was the strongest. It dawned on me. Even being the most physically prepared doesn't guarantee you stay. A few days later, they brought us to the auditorium. We filled the rows, uniforms stiff and new, bodies anything but. The officer said, "Today we have a guest. Dr. Angela, psychologist." A woman in her 40s with dark shoulder-length hair, a simple blazer, and a light blouse walked in. Without shouting or putting on a show, she stood at the podium. "I know you're tired," she said. "I'm not here to make your training harder. I'm here to talk about why some people stay." And Angela handed out sheets. At the top they read, "Grit Scale. Please fill these out honestly," she said. "This isn't for your grade, it's a mirror." The questions looked simple, but each one hit the center of my life. How often do you leave things unfinished? Do you often jump from one interest to another? When things get hard, do you tend to keep going? My pen hovered in mid-air. Images of half-finished gym memberships, an abandoned instrument, and dropped classes flashed through my mind. I thought, if I answer honestly, my grit score isn't going to look very pretty. One of the guys raised his hand. "Doc, seriously, these few questions can really predict who stays and who doesn't. We took a ton of tests to get here." Angela smiled softly. "Those tests mostly measure your current abilities, your intelligence, grades, physical fitness. I'm measuring something." She wrote grit on the board and said, "Grit is the combination of long-term passion and long-term perseverance. Lots of people start strong. The question is, how many are willing to stay with one path for years?" Then she wrote, "Skill equals talent times effort, achievement equals skill, effort. Effort turns your talent into skill," she said, "and effort again turns your skill into achievement. So effort counts twice." That night, after all of that, the barracks felt quieter than usual. When the lights went out, only a faint glow from a corner fixture remained. Jake sat on the edge of his bunk. He pushed his glasses up slightly and said, "I don't think this place is." I said, "What are you talking about? You're ahead of us in everything." he replied, academically sure. The theory here isn't hard for me, but this lifestyle, the constant discipline, the non-stop pressure, I don't know if I want to live like this for years. I said maybe in a few weeks it'll feel normal. He gave a bitter half smile. Maybe being smart means knowing when to say no. The next morning, the whistle blew like every other day, but when my eyes landed on Jake's bunk, everything went quiet for a moment. The bed was empty. Blanket neatly folded, no books, no papers, no belongings. Mark stood beside me and said quietly, "He's..." We looked at each other. No words were needed. From that point on, it wasn't just about who got in anymore. It was also about who actually stays. A few days later, walking down a narrow hallway, I passed a half-open office door and heard voices. I slowed my steps. The officer was saying, "So this questionnaire of yours actually predicts better than our tests who finishes the course." Angela's voice replied, "Your system is excellent. Anyone who gets this far is already among the best. But even among the best, there's something else deciding who keeps." The officer asked, "And its name is?" "Grit," she said. Angela continued, "We're seeing that people with higher grit scores are much more likely to complete the course, even if they're only average on some of the tests." The officer said, "So an ordinary but persistent person can outperform a genius." "We've seen it happen many..." That night I lay on my bunk again, staring up at the metal ceiling of the barracks, while the sound of everyone else's breathing washed gently through the room. Until this point, the story of success had been simple in my head. The one with more talent wins. Now, after the empty bunks, after Angela's words, after Jake's departure, a new question was crawling under my skin. If talent is just the ticket in, what is it that keeps you to the end? Am I one of those who only keep going when it's easy? Or can I become one of those who, when it gets hard, finally show who they really are? I didn't have a ready answer, but I knew that from that night on I wouldn't just ask, "How talented am I?" I'd also have to ask, "How long am I willing to stay and keep going?"